It is 8 a.m. on a sweltering Monday in Fortaleza, Brazil, and the vault of the Banco Central is supposed to be impenetrable. It is a fortress within a fortress, a steel-reinforced concrete box protected by motion sensors, seismic detectors, and CCTV cameras that never blink. The bank employees go through their morning routine, coffee in hand, unlocking the heavy steel doors to prepare the cash reserves for the armored trucks waiting outside. But when the massive tumblers click and the door swings open, the air inside doesn't smell like sterile currency. It smells like wet earth. The floor is covered in a fine layer of white dust, and in the center of the room, punching through 1.1 meters of solid steel and concrete, is a hole. It is perfectly round, barely wide enough for a human body. The shelves surrounding it, which on Friday held the equivalent of $70 million, are empty. There are no alarms ringing. There are no shattered windows. The bank has just been victim to the greatest heist in the history of Brazil, and the thieves didn't just break in. They literally moved the earth to get there. To understand the sheer audacity of this crime, you have to rewind 3 months to a nondescript commercial property exactly 1 city block away from the bank. A group of men in overalls had rented the building and put up a sign, Grama Sintética, synthetic grass. It was the perfect cover. To the neighbors, they were just hard-working landscapers, constantly loading heavy sacks of soil and turf into white vans. They were polite. They handed out business cards. But the business was a lie. The sacks didn't contain soil for gardens. They contained the earth the men were excavating from a tunnel that was slowly snaking its way under the city streets. This wasn't a crude hole dug with shovels. It was an engineering marvel. It was 78 meters long, lined with wooden beams to prevent collapse, and equipped with its own electric lighting and air conditioning system to keep the diggers from suffocating in the tropical heat. They were mining for gold directly under the feet of the police patrols walking the beat above. For 90 days, the gang worked in shifts, navigating the city's complex sewer lines and electrical grids. They had obtained the underground blueprints of the city, likely through bribery, allowing them to steer their tunnel with surgical precision. They weren't just thieves. They were mathematicians. If their angle was off by even 1 degree, they would hit the bank's foundation wall instead of the vault floor, or worse, tunnel into the sewage main and drown. But they didn't miss. On the weekend of August 6th, the drill bit finally hit the reinforced floor of the main vault. This was the moment of highest risk. The vault was equipped with seismic sensors designed to detect the vibration of a drill. But the gang had done their homework. They knew exactly where the sensors were blind, or perhaps they had help from the inside. They used diamond-tipped saws to cut through the steel mesh, working slowly, agonizingly, to keep the noise below the threshold of the alarms. Once they breached the floor, they were inside the Holy of Holies. Stacked around them were containers of 50 real notes, used bills, untraceable. The bank didn't record the serial numbers of circulation currency. It was a sea of cash. But now they faced a problem of physics. The money weighed 3.5 tons. This wasn't a grab-and-go. It was a heavy cargo operation. For hours, in the dead silence of the bank, they passed bundles of cash down the hole, bucket by bucket, sliding them along a pulley system through the dark tunnel, back to the fake landscaping office. They worked through the night, sweating in the humidity, moving faster and faster as the sun began to rise. They took nearly 165 million reais. And then, just as quietly as they had arrived, they vanished. When the police finally crawled into the tunnel on Monday afternoon, they were stunned. They found bolt cutters, saws, and empty bottles of Gatorade. But what chilled them was the message written in marker on one of the wooden support beams. It wasn't a taunt. It wasn't a symbol. It was a calculation of the distance to the vault. It was strictly professional. The gang had cleaned the safe house with bleach to destroy DNA. They had scattered white powder to throw off the police dogs. They had even left a stash of small bills behind, as if the remaining millions were too heavy to bother with. The Grama Sintética company had dissolved into thin air. But the story didn't end with a clean getaway. The sheer volume of the money became a curse. You cannot hide 3 tons of cash without people noticing. As the gang split up and fled across Brazil, the euphoria of the heist turned into a bloodbath. The police closed in, but so did the criminal underworld. Corrupt detectives realized they could kidnap the thieves and ransom them for the stolen loot. The mastermind, a man known as Ailmau, was found months later on a dirt road, riddled with bullets, his body left as a warning. Money began turning up in weird places, buried in backyards, hidden in the tires of cars, stuffed into hollowed-out walls. Years later, dozens of arrests have been made, and some of the money has been recovered. But the vast majority of the 160 million reais is still out there, floating in the economy, buying houses, cars, and silence. The Banco Central Heist proved that with enough patience, engineering, and nerve, no fortress is impregnable. But it also proved that stealing the money is the easy part. Surviving it is the real challenge. The tunnel in Fortaleza has long since been filled with concrete, sealed shut like a scar on the city's face. But the legend of the men who walked out with 3 tons of cash remains open.